Hey guys, tonight we are slipping quietly into the fragrant, dust-laced alleyways of 10th century Nishapur, where the carpets are thicker than the politics, and the air hums with the slow shuffle of sandalwood merchants, melon vendors, and tacksmen who would really rather be napping. You are one such taxman. The morning begins with an odd combination of goat cheese breath and mild dread. You stir beneath a scratchy wool blanket that smells like someone once stored pickled radishes in it, poorly. Your head throbs, your lips are dry, and for some reason, your left sandal is floating in a bowl of lentil stew. It was not there last night. Also, you appear to be using an official government scroll as a pillow. There is, unhelpfully, a camel watching you from the doorway. You have no idea who owns this camel. This is your life now. You are a newly appointed carpet tax collector for the Bayad administration. Congratulations, they said. It is a stable position. You will get to travel, they said. You will meet interesting people. What they failed to mention was that travel often meant trudging through sandstorms behind an overburdened mule, and the interesting people would try to bribe you with lukewarm apricots or recite poetry until you forget why you are there. You blink at the scroll under your cheek. It is wrinkled, faintly damp, and bears the official wax seal of the Ministry of Market Regulation. Your job is to assess, record, and collect the empire's levy on all carpet sales within the region, which sounds glamorous until you remember that the average carpet merchant is more skilled in negotiation than a Byzantine ambassador. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, while you are at it, drop a comment with your location and local time, just to see how far this sleepy little ride travels. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. The camel snorts. Right, back to business. You shuffle outside into the soft haze of early sun. Nishapur is stirring. Stall doors creak open, kettles hiss, and somewhere a pigeon coughs ominously. Your first task is to review your territory. 10 streets, 4 caravanserai, and a quarter market known as the place where rugs go to die. Nobody will explain that nickname. You pass under a carved archway where a date seller waves with 3 fingers and an alarming eye twitch. The street here is paved in uneven stones and bits of broken pottery, and it smells faintly of goat milk and roasted cumin. As you walk, you tug your robe straighter, trying to look official, though it is difficult to look authoritative when your turban is on backward. Historically, Nishapur was a major cultural and trade hub along the Silk Road. The city thrived with merchants, scholars, Sufis, and bureaucrats who, like you, spent a lot of time pretending to understand their job. At its peak, it was one of the most important cities in Greater Khorasan, home to astronomers, poets, and yes, extensive carpet production. Your role is to ensure every carpet, wool, silk, cotton blend, or whatever mystery material goatshine weave is made of gets properly taxed, and that the proceeds make it back to the regional administrator, who, legend says, once fined his own wife for underreporting a tapestry sale. Your first appointment is with Farhad the wool hoarder. He is a merchant of modest means, but maximal complaints. You find him sprawled on a bundle of rugs, combing a ferret. "You are late," he says, not looking up. You are not. He lists the carpets he has sold since your last visit. 2 prayer rugs, 1 runner, 3 saddle blankets, and a ceremonial cloth that suspiciously resembles a carpet cut in half. You scribble notes on the margin of your scroll while trying to fend off a fly that seems personally offended by your existence. "Any silk blends?" you ask. Farhad narrows his eyes. "Define blend," you sigh. "Tax rates differ by material. You see, silk costs more to tax than wool, but merchants have been known to blend just enough silk into a corner of the carpet to demand a higher price, while insisting on paying the lower wool tax. It is a game of threads and loopholes, and you're losing. Also, someone has poured tea on your sandal. You finish the inspection, collect the appropriate coins after declining a dubious offer of pickled walnuts as payment, and stumble back onto the road, exhausted after just one merchant. Your ledger already has tea stains, ink smudges, and what might be pigeon droppings. As you walk, you pass a beggar reciting lines from Ferdowsi's Shahnameh with impeccable rhythm. You toss him a fig and wonder, not for the first time, whether carpet tax collectors appear in epic poetry. Probably not, unless they get eaten by dragons. Historians still argue whether the Persian tax infrastructure at this time was more bureaucratically advanced than its Abbasid neighbors, or simply more poetic about it. What is agreed upon is that tax collectors like you often had to rely on intuition, guesswork, and deeply inconvenient spreadsheets written on goatskin. As you reach the edge of the market, the camel is still there, still watching. You blink. Wait, that is not the same camel. It is wearing jewelry and a saddlebag labeled Ministry of Salt Rations. Great. You have stolen someone else's government camel. You may be executed. You may also be late for your next appointment. You mount the camel. It groans. You groan back. And slowly, with the grace of a half-drunk tortoise, you set off for the southern end of the city. You are 1 merchant down, 50 to go, and you are already questioning your life choices. Still, the wind is soft, the jasmine trees are blooming, and your camel has very gentle eyelashes. Maybe today will not be so bad. You are not even halfway to the second merchant when your borrowed camel decides to take an unscheduled break by sitting in the middle of a spice market. You try everything: gentle coaxing, stern threats, a whispered promise of dates, and a song, but she refuses to budge. A crowd gathers. A small child throws a lentil at you. You pretend not to notice. Eventually, you dismount with whatever dignity you can salvage, leading the obstinate beast by the reins through a maze of turmeric clouds and chattering vendors. You pass a man selling dried apricots shaped like animals, and a woman peddling authentic Roman toenail clippers that look suspiciously like bent fish hooks. The carpet tax business, you realize, is almost respectable by comparison. Your next appointment is at a long, shaded stall draped in hanging carpets of every imaginable hue: deep crimson, indigo, bronze, and a shade of green that might only exist in Persian poetry. This is Mahin's stall, and Mahin is someone you are both afraid of and mildly in awe of. She is around 60, sharp as saffron, and has more influence in this market than most junior officials in the city's governing council. Late, she says without looking up, plucking threads from a newly dyed kilim. Technically early, you mutter. She tosses you a flat, padded cushion and pours tea into 2 clay cups. The tea smells like mint, rose, and mild judgment. You accept the cup with gratitude. So, she says, have you figured out how to tell a genuine Isfahan weave from a Kashan yet? Or do you still rely on the old poke and sniff method? You take a sip of tea. I have refined my process. It now includes squinting meaningfully. She smirks and gestures toward her wares. You begin the inspection. Carpets are more than floor coverings here. They are symbols of status, artistry, and occasionally dowry negotiations gone wrong. You inspect the patterns, noting the fine knots, the dyes, the telltale weave tension that separates a master artisan from a gifted amateur. You remember something your predecessor once said before quitting and becoming a melon farmer. If the knots are too tight, the merchant is nervous. If the edges curl, the carpet's been lied about. If there's a tea stain, that's your fault. You jot notes. Mahin watches you with the expression of someone calculating whether you would make a good carpet yourself. You know, she says casually, you missed something. You glance up. Oh? She unrolls a small rug from beneath her stall, revealing an intricate piece, unlike any you have seen, deep burgundy, with woven inscriptions along the border in Old Pahlavi script. This one was traded yesterday. Do you recognize the language? You do not. She smiles. It is pre-Islamic, Zoroastrian blessing woven in, worth double the tax of the others. You pause. You kept it off the ledger to test me? She shrugs. Or to protect it. Historians still argue whether religious artifacts like this were taxed or exempt during the Buyid era. Depends on the year. Depends on the collector. You stare at the rug. It is beautiful. It also smells faintly of cinnamon and secrets. Mahin pours more tea. Would you like to trade? She asks. The rug for, say, forgetting to charge me for this month's sales? You shake your head. Tempting, but I would rather not be stoned by a bureaucrat with strong opinions on rug ethics. She laughs, a dry, amused sound like fabric rustling in wind. Then I suppose I owe you coin. I hope you accept yours without needing it weighed 4 times like the last boy. You collect the tax, feeling only mildly humiliated, and mark her as paid, slightly scary in your margin. Outside, the camel is chewing something she definitely found on the ground. You mount up again, adjusting your scroll pouch, and trying not to think about how heavy it has become. The tax money jingles softly, a sound both promising and extremely robbable. You head toward the caravanserai for lunch. It is a wide, square complex of stone and wood, surrounded by traders, pilgrims, and a man loudly advertising cursed wine jars from Alexander's army. You settle by a corner fountain and unwrap a meal of flatbread, olives, and what you hope is cheese. A stray cat eyes you hungrily. You toss it a piece. It bats the food away with disdain. You respect that. As you eat, you overhear two merchants complaining about velvet bribes. Apparently, a rival vendor paid off a tax inspector last week with a bolt of imported velvet, and now no one else can sell fabric without being accused of corruption. You chew slowly. Velvet bribes are not officially banned, but they are very frowned upon. You consider the ethics of accepting gifts. Once, a carpet seller in Ray offered you a box of pomegranates shaped like little ducks. You declined. Later, you regretted it. One of the merchants notices you listening and leans over. You are the new carpet man, yes? With the camel that steals figs? You sigh. That is not my camel. He nods solemnly. Few things truly are. You blink. Later that afternoon, you stop by a quieter alley where a widow named Tomina sells second-hand carpets from a makeshift lean-to. She offers you tea before you speak, which is either very polite or a trap. She shows you 3 carpets, each one older than your career. The corners are worn, the threads sun-faded. You recognize one as a style no longer woven, patterned with fish and flames, a design abandoned after the rise of Islamic aniconism. These were my husband's, she says softly. He passed last spring. I kept the good ones. These are survivors. You hesitate. According to official guidelines, used carpets are taxable if sold, but exempt if gifted or inherited. This sale is somewhere in between. You consider waiving the fee, but Tomina insists. If I am to sell in this market, I will not be accused of avoiding tax. Take the coins, then help me fold them. So you do. The sun begins to lower as you leave her stall, the sky smudging into orange and gold. Your camel has disappeared again. In its place is a man selling tea from an enormous copper kettle who claims to have seen the camel heading toward the bathhouse. You sip the tea. It is very sweet, possibly too sweet, but for now, you are paid, you are upright, and you have not been arrested. A good day. The bathhouse echoes like a marble canyon, all dripping stone and murmuring steam. You do not find your camel, of course. What you find instead is a shirtless man singing an ode to a goat in what you think is Parthian, and a junior scribe from the finance bureau trying to hide behind a pillar. You nod politely. The scribe vanishes with the elegance of someone who has definitely filed the wrong paperwork and hopes you are too tired to investigate. You step back out into the sunlight, slightly damper than before, and in no better position regarding your missing animal. A boy appears beside you, 8, maybe 9 years old, with wild hair and a grin that says he has definitely stolen something today. I saw your camel, he announces. She is in love. You blink. With whom? He shrugs. A jug seller from bulk. He has kind eyes. You decide this is not a priority. You give the boy a copper coin to forget he ever saw either of you and head for your next stop, the dye merchant's quarter. Now, if you have never entered a dye district at midday, imagine walking into a rainbow that has been left out too long and now smells faintly of pickled onions. Every vat simmers with color, indigo like midnight ink, saffron gold, cochineal red crush from beetles, and a green so vibrant it looks fake even as it stains your feet through your sandals. You pass a sign that reads, "Warning, do not fall in. No refunds. There are at least a dozen carpet makers here who do their own dyeing, and you are supposed to check whether they are buying their pigments domestically or smuggling in untaxed Armenian safflower under false names like Desert Sunrise Extract." You approach the first dyer, a barrel-chested man with violet-stained fingers and a name that translates loosely to "he who once ate soap on a bet." His carpets hang nearby in a flurry of floral and geometric designs, each with fringe so perfect it looks combed by angels. He insists all his dye is local. You raise an eyebrow and point to the unmistakable blush pink rug by his stall. "That," he says, "beet juice. Really, special beets." You lean closer. "Imported beets?" He pauses. "Spiritual beets." You scribble something vague on your scroll and take a sample fiber for testing. The bureau has a system for this. Send a thread to a clerk who dips it in vinegar and yells if it turns blue. Science. The man offers you a snack, some kind of walnut pastry wrapped in mulberry leaves. You accept, partly out of caution in case it is a bribe, and partly because you skipped breakfast due to your camel's morning existential crisis. You visit 3 more dyers, each with slightly different versions of how pink is made. One claims pigeon blood. Another says sunset reflected off copper bowls. The third just winks and offers you a seat. By this point, your tax scroll is a dense mess of scribbles, calculations, guesses, and 2 doodles of animals that may or may not be donkeys. You find a quiet bench and try to sort through your notes while a man plays a mournful tune on a reed flute nearby. You glance up and realize he is staring directly at you as he plays. He nods solemnly, like you are both sharing something deep and spiritual. You nod back. He stops playing. "You owe me 2 coins now. One for music, one for the stare." You toss him one and tell him you were blinking, not staring. He accepts this and resumes playing, this time facing a wall. It is only then you notice the bureau's inspector emblem scratched lightly into the bench where you sit, a tiny symbol denoting that this area has been unofficially audited by another collector, probably one of your rivals. The carpet tax collector world is small, territorial, and surprisingly passive-aggressive. You make a note. Watch for overlapping districts. Avoid bench inspector. As the sun climbs higher and your sandals begin to melt slightly, you trudge toward the northern edge of the city, where the tent makers reside. Most of them do not deal in carpets, but sometimes they take in older rugs to patch the bases of their shelters, and those exchanges, however indirect, must be logged. You approach a towering tent stitched from what appears to be 20 mismatched carpets, some of them visibly older than you. A woman greets you from inside, tall, sun-browned, with a face like someone who once argued with a sandstorm and won. She offers no greeting, only a question. "What do you weigh?" You blink. "Excuse me? We trade by body weight. You get 2 carpets if you can lift the pole and not sneeze." You decline both offers and instead ask politely about any recent rug trades. She disappears inside and returns with a scrap of fabric that might once have been a prayer rug or possibly a decorative goat blanket. She says it came from a traveling merchant who paid for a patched tent roof with it, and half a jar of dried plums. You ask for the merchant's name. She says, Plumbeard. You write this down. You do not question it. Historians still argue whether bartered carpet fragments counted toward taxable property during peacetime in the Samanid court. You lean toward yes, but mark it with an asterisk, just in case. By late afternoon, your feet are blistered, your scroll is dangerously close to unraveling, and you are beginning to suspect you might be slightly sun-poisoned. You pause under a date palm and pour water over your head, trying to remember if you actually collected the payment from that second dyer or just imagined it. You remember the widow's carpet, the Pahlavi script. You remember Mahin's knowing smile. And you remember, unfortunately, that tomorrow you are scheduled to inspect a shipment of tax-exempt gift carpets sent from Shiraz that may or may not have been smuggled into the city under a fake wedding license. The work never ends. As you prepare to head back toward your lodging, you spot your camel across the square. She is standing beside a melon cart and has a flower tucked behind one ear. A jug seller stands beside her, humming. You decide to give them a moment. By dawn, your dreams have already betrayed you. They were full of rugs with teeth, coins that bite back, and camels reciting tax codes in the voice of your supervisor. You wake tangled in your bedroll, one leg half off the woven mat that your host insists is ancient Kashani work, though you strongly suspect it was made last Thursday by his cousin's apprentice. Your camel is gone again. You sigh, get dressed, and reach for your tax scroll. A slow, creaking rip sounds under you. The mat has split. You have just destroyed a taxable carpet in your sleep. You briefly debate taxing yourself. Instead, you head for the bureau outpost to report yesterday's findings and to retrieve your official wax stamps. The building leans to the left, probably from years of being housed beside a bakery that deals primarily in overproofed flatbreads. Inside, the scribes are already arguing over ink allocations, and someone has definitely spilled date syrup on the master ledger. You spot Farzan, the clerk assigned to your dye samples, slumped in a corner with purple fingertips and a vacant expression. What did the pink thread test as? You ask. He looks up. Definitely not beetroot. Possibly flamingo. Flamingo? He nods. Or a bird pretending to be one. You make a note. The bureau does not have a flamingo dye code, so you mark it under atypical organic sources and draw a small bird for emphasis. After collecting your seal kit and dodging 2 junior officials who want to chat about quota timelines, you make your way to the city's shipping district. The air here smells like rope, brine, and people yelling over crates. Your job today: audit the so-called gifts from Shiraz, a batch of carpets allegedly sent for a cousin's wedding, which somehow involves 47 rolls of suspiciously high-quality silk weave. A customs official meets you at the gate. He is sweating profusely and clearly stalling. Ah, tax collector, you look rested. Did you lose weight? No. A shame. You ask to see the carpets. They are inside, he says, but they are being aired for freshness. Very private. You raise one eyebrow. He sighs and gestures toward a warehouse with a sign that reads, "Raisins only," in crooked calligraphy. You step inside and are hit with the smell of rosewater and mothballs. The carpets are beautiful, vibrant, intricate, clearly artisan level, and absolutely taxable. A young man in wedding robes appears from behind a crate. He is beaming. Is it not romantic? 47 gifts, one for each cousin, and also me. You nod slowly. Where is the bride? She is metaphorical. Right. You unroll a particularly lavish carpet embroidered with hunting scenes. Somewhere near the corner, you find it, a faint mark in Persian shorthand that translates roughly to Warehouse D, Shiraz Exports. Not a gift, a shipment. You stamp 3 of the carpets with the tax emblem and declare the rest temporarily held until verified. The customs man groans. The metaphorical groom sulks. You take a raisin as compensation and move on. Now it is time for the worst part of your week, the double count inspection. Every Friday, you are required to randomly revisit a handful of households you have already taxed to ensure they have not suddenly found additional rugs in the pantry or inherited an antique runner from a long-lost aunt who suspiciously reappears every audit season. You arrive at the first home, a modest courtyard dwelling where the door is open and the carpets are already stacked neatly, too neatly. You are greeted by a woman with the calm expression of someone who has absolutely hidden 3 rugs in the ceiling. "Peace upon you," she says, handing you a figure. "Would you like to inspect the exact same carpets as last week?" You nod. "Yes, but also the ceiling." There is a brief pause. Then she whistles. A small child descends from the rafters like a spider. He holds a rolled-up mat and a guilty face. "Did he fall asleep up there?" you ask. She smiles tightly. "He was playing hide and sleep." You tax the carpet. The second household is even bolder. They claim to have converted all rugs into prayer flags out of spiritual necessity. You are skeptical, especially when one flag features a lion eating a gazelle, which feels more martial than mystical. "Symbolic," says the homeowner, eyes darting. "Of what?" Spiritual hunting." You write it down, because it will look good in your report. The Bureau loves symbols, especially when they confuse people into paying extra fees. By the time you reach the 3rd inspection site, a tanner's cottage on the edge of town, you are sun-baked and suspicious. The tanner waves cheerfully and invites you inside. His floors are bare. "I sold all my carpets," he says. "To whom?" "A goat dealer from the south." "Name?" His name was Goatman. You write Goatman, possible alias, and ask if he has a receipt. "No, but he left this." The tanner hands you a small stone with a goat carved on it. You sigh. Historians still argue whether bartered goods with non-written proof counted toward provincial tax law. Some say yes, some say only on Tuesdays. You count it. As you leave, you realize you have forgotten lunch. Again, you chew on the raisin from earlier and decide it might be time to visit the Weavers Guild for some real food. They are notoriously proud of their carpet work and occasionally host community feasts to celebrate the completion of particularly elaborate tapestries. You arrive just as one such meal is wrapping up. The hall is decorated with wall hangings so detailed they look like painted murals. You recognize a few patterns from yesterday's inspections, and one that was allegedly destroyed in a fire. Interesting. A senior guild member greets you with warm bread and suspicious eyes. Ah, the collector. Would you like to eat before or after you ruin the mood? During, you say, smiling, over roasted eggplant and rice. You subtly question two weavers about a certain design. One feigns ignorance. The other accidentally refers to it by its full pattern code, a detail only someone in possession of the piece would know. You stamp your scroll, finishing the bite first. As the evening light turns everything gold, you return to your lodgings. Your camel is waiting, flower still tucked behind her ear, now chewing a melon rind with infinite serenity. You pat her flank. Tomorrow, we raid the warehouse district, she belches. By the time the sun crests the far-off mountains, like a yolk refusing to spill, you are already ankle-deep in rug bundles and bureaucratic despair. The warehouse district greets you with its usual cacophony. Hawkers yelling about lentils, someone trying to barter chickens for incense, and a lute player valiantly attempting to drown out the dock workers with a rendition of the Ballad of the Lazy Vizier. You nod to the port authority, an overworked man with a tunic permanently crusted with fish scale and lamp oil, and flash your official tax stamp. He groans like a man just told he must explain grain measurements to a goat. We have 3 warehouses flagged for possible overstock, he says, but one is problematic. You raise an eyebrow. Problematic how? He scratches his beard. Let us say, theoretically haunted. You blink. Haunted by what? He leans in. Echoes. You pause. Echoes? He nods with complete seriousness. Very judgmental echoes. Naturally, you choose that one first. Inside, warehouse C smells like cedar and secrets. Carpets lie stacked in horizontal towers, wrapped in muslin and tied with dyed cords. Some crimson, others teal, a few purple with suspicious pink undertones. You make a mental note. Possible flamingo recurrence. As you unroll the first bundle, something whispers. Not a person, not wind, just unfair. You freeze. Historians still argue whether superstition among early Persian tax agents had any measurable impact on paperwork delay rates. Some believe it added entire weeks. Others claim it merely provided an excuse to eat lunch longer. You clear your throat. Warehouse ghosts are not subject to tax. The whisper does not respond, which, frankly, feels rude. You press on. The carpets here are exquisite, detailed miniatures woven into the weft, golden thread used not as flourish but as line work. These are not household goods. They are art, and they are not registered anywhere in your ledger. You pick up one particularly fine roll and feel the shift of something hard inside. Carefully, you unspool it to reveal 5 silver drachmas, 3 tiny glass vials of saffron, and a scroll labeled wedding inventory. Do not tax. Oh no. You stamp the carpet twice. Once for the textile, once for the smuggling attempt. The whisper this time says, rude. Moving on, you examine a stack near the back marked with an unusual symbol. A camel carrying a son. You recognize it. The emblem of a minor merchant house believed dissolved after a scandal involving turmeric, 5 falcons, and a misdelivered marriage proposal. You whisper to yourself, so they are still operating. The crate is filled with flat-weave rugs, not ornate, but intricate in their own right. Geometric patterns, clever weft shifts, very likely exported to avoid detection. You double-check your register, and yes, the house is listed as inactive, penalties cleared. Liars. You update the ledger. Now comes the dance of the dockyard. Each shipment must be compared against its manifest, cross-checked with the latest tariff bulletin. And this is important, smelled, because scent, as every seasoned inspector knows, tells you what ink and paper will not. You smell rose oil? Imported, subject to luxury tax. You smell sheep sweat and old barley? Probably local, possibly cursed. The 4th crate gives you both. You pry it open and find carpet rolls stuffed with spice sachets, illicit cinnamon, judging by the sweetness, which is strange. Cinnamon is typically taxed under the foreign goods bracket, unless declared medicinal or matrimonial. A note tucked into one reads, "For auntie's back pain and uncle's attitude. Close call." You tax it anyway. Outside, a caravan driver is loudly insisting that his rugs are for personal meditation purposes. You inspect them. One features a man being devoured by a snake that appears to be praying. Meditative? You ask. Yes, the man insists. Symbolic of spiritual surrender. You are surrendering to the tax office then. The driver scowls. Not spiritually. You tax it anyway. And now comes a classic warehouse twist. The surprise visit from your superior. He arrives without warning, in a robe so elaborately patterned it might qualify as a district by itself. His beard is oiled. His sandals are suspiciously clean. He smells faintly of pomegranate and career ambition. "Ah, collector," he says, surveying the chaos. "How fares the carpet situation?" You gesture toward the stamped bundles. Lively, he raises a critical eyebrow. "Any political incidents yet? Accidental taxation of diplomatic gifts? Or sacred family heirlooms tied to minor revolts?" You pause. "Well," you say, "there was an heirloom involved in a metaphorical wedding." He waves a hand. "Good. Keep it metaphorical." Then he lowers his voice. "There are rumors, You glance around. Hauntings? No, worse. Tax evasion in the southern caravanserai. Entire inventories disappearing off ledgers. Hidden compartments. Dye schemes meant to mimic lesser valued weaves. You blink. Carpet fraud? Carpet fraud. He claps you on the shoulder. "I trust you will look into it." Then he departs, trailing sandalwood behind him. You immediately suspect your week just got longer. It is late afternoon now, and you have yet to eat anything solid. You settle for a handful of pistachios and the heel of last night's bread, which has hardened to roughly the density of a roof tile. At sunset, the final tally begins. One apprentice helps you count and miscounts twice. You gently remind him, "This is not wool." You do not round up. He frowns, "But if I feel spiritually that there are 20, there are 19. He sulks. You hand him a damp rag. and tell him to clean the tax seals. The sun slides below the horizon. Your camel reappears, as if summoned by moonlight and sarcasm. Her breath smells faintly of stolen apricots. You pat her head. "Do not eat the warehouse ghosts." She sneezes. Back at your lodging, you light the oil lamp and open the day's report scroll. You write, "Found possible illegal house emblems. Whispering storage facilities confirmed. Cinnamon noted." And at the bottom, "Suspected fraud to be investigated. Need lunch. Possibly a life." Then you extinguish the lamp, slide under your woven mat, and whisper into the dark. Rude. No one whispers back. For now, morning finds you half folded over your ledger, ink crusted to your sleeve, and your spine making noises no man under 40 should hear. Outside, the city hums to life. Bakers shuffling their coals, water sellers calling like songbirds with debt, and someone down the street loudly arguing with a goose. You stretch. Your shoulder cracks like old pottery. Today is caravanserai day. You saddle up your camel, who glares at you as if you ruined her weekend plans, and make your way to the southern quarter. The air smells like sun-warmed bricks and chickpea stew, and the alleys are clogged with merchants stringing up colorful banners to welcome a visiting dignitary, someone from Ecbatana, allegedly fond of soft cheese and hard bargaining. But you are not here for courtiers. You are here for carpet crime. The southern caravanserai is one of the oldest in the city. Stone arches worn smooth by centuries of tired travelers. Courtyards where the dust never fully settles. And everywhere, rugs, hung over balconies, rolled beneath benches, draped over pack animals. One donkey wears a carpet like a royal cape and seems deeply pleased about it. The gatekeeper nods to you. "Tax inspector? Yes?" You nod back. "Good," he mutters. "Tell them to stop hiding things in the tassels." That, it turns out, is your first clue. Historians still argue whether caravanserai acted more like resting places or covert trading hubs. Some evidence suggests they doubled as gossip centers, barter networks, and makeshift courts. Others say they were simply places where you tried not to get your shoes stolen. Inside, you find chaos, as expected. Traders from across the empire and beyond, Parthians with thick woolen cloaks, Greeks in scandalously short tunics, and a very loud man claiming to sell Sumerian carpet oil, which you are 99% sure is olive oil in a decorated jug. You begin your inspections. The first suspect is a merchant from Persepolis with suspiciously symmetrical teeth and an air of someone who practices speeches in the mirror. His rugs are bright and showy, all dyed with colors that make your paperwork twitch. Lapis blue, saffron gold, a red that screams, "I was once Beatles." "Any declarations to make?" you ask. He smiles. "Only that beauty cannot be taxed." You nod slowly. "Right, but Beatles can." You unroll one rug and find a clever double weave, 2 layers stitched together at the ends, with a cavity in the middle. Inside, coins, tiny packets of cloves, and a folded letter labeled, "For Auntie's spinal humors." You sigh. You stamp the carpet and confiscate the coins. Next is a pair of sisters selling prayer rugs. One holds the books. The other sells with the ferocity of a woman who once argued with thunder and won. Their stock looks above board until you notice the tassels, braided in a strange way, thicker than usual. You pluck one apart. Inside, slips of gold leaf. They both gasp. For ceremonial offerings. One cries. You nod. Ah, yes, offerings. To the local temple, to the family temple. The other corrects. Taxable. She scowls. By what law? You flip your ledger to the latest addendum, subclause 3A. Temple not open to public? Still taxable. They groan in unison. You nearly admire it. By midday, you have found 6 smuggled dye kits, 4 false floor mats with hidden compartments, and a rug depicting a hunting scene that, when you squint, reveals an entire embedded game, board complete with movable pebbles. You sit down to lunch, flatbread, and goat cheese, and watch a small boy trying to sell a flying carpet demonstration to gullible travelers. It involves the carpet, 2 ropes, and a very angry goose. You make a note to tax the performance if it earns more than a handful of dates. Then comes the most suspicious merchant of all, a man with no name, no assistant, and no ledger. His carpets are stacked in a neat pyramid, each one dull, beige, and utterly unremarkable, too unremarkable. You approach. No dyes? You ask. No dyes, he answers. No patterns? No need. Do they do anything? They exist, he offers helpfully. You unroll one. It is beige. You press your palm to the weave and feel. Warm, too warm. You unroll another. This one smells faintly of myrrh and regret. The third one reveals it all. The edges are coated with crushed poppy paste, opium, thinly applied to avoid detection, dried to a harmless-looking sheen. The rugs are being used as courier goods, not household items. You raise an eyebrow. Medical, the man says quickly. You write him a fine so large it needs its own scroll. As the sun begins to lower, you take a walk around the courtyard, watching travelers haggle over spice pouches and brass kettles. The carpets are everywhere, each one a potential story, a possible fine, or a whispered scandal. You spot an elderly man reading poetry aloud to a rug, which is not even the strangest thing you have seen this week. And then you see it. A boy, maybe 12, hauling a rug half his size through the side gate. You follow quietly. He ducks behind the stable and begins to unroll the rug, not to display it, but to retrieve something from inside. You step closer. It is a scroll, long, delicate, and marked with the seal of the Eastern Trade Council, not something a child should be carrying in burlap. Hey, you say softly. He jumps. It is not mine. Clearly, you crouch beside him. Why hide it? He bites his lip. My uncle said, not to trust inspectors. You smile. Your uncle is wise, but not invisible. You take the scroll gently and examine the seal. If this is what you think it is, an off-ledger deal between the council and a northern prince, it explains the rumors, and it means someone is laundering documents through carpet shipments. You will need to investigate further. Quietly, as you exit the caravanserai, the gatekeeper hands you a date pastry. You survived, he says. You nod. For now, you mount your camel. She immediately attempts to walk into a tree. It has been a long day. You ride slowly back toward the city, past sunset cellars and gossipy fountains, wondering how deep the smuggling ring runs. Rugs do not talk, but apparently they whisper. And today, they have told you a great deal. You wake the next morning with a nagging itch at the back of your mind, and less metaphorically, between your shoulder blades. Carpet dust? Paranoia? Either way, the scroll you confiscated is still tucked safely beneath your ledger, and your camel is chewing on something she absolutely should not be chewing. You skip breakfast. This is serious. It is time to visit the records office. Now, the Persian imperial record halls are not what you might expect. No gleaming marble columns. No silent, robed sages. Just a row of squat brick buildings that smell like mildew and saffron, staffed entirely by men and women whose main hobby appears to be correcting your spelling. The head scribe, Parvin, a woman with ink stains in the shape of mountain ranges on her hands, greets you with the enthusiasm of someone receiving their 5th tax inspector this week. I need trade correspondences, you say. She sighs. Which region? Eastern Council. Past 6 months. Anything with rug exports or irregular shipment volume. She gives you a long look. Do you mean legal irregularity or the usual nonsense? You consider. Whichever one involves hiding scrolls in upholstery. She nods and disappears into the stacks like a librarian ghost. While you wait, you poke through the weekly bulletin, a handwritten sheet posted near the teapot. This week's highlight: new dye restrictions in the northern satrapies. Beetle red now classed as ceremonial. You blink. That explains the merchant's panic yesterday. Historians still argue whether the satrapies enforced these dye bans for religious reasons, trade protection, or just because the governor's cousin got a rash. But for you, it means extra paperwork. Parvin returns dragging 3 scroll cases and a bowl of dried apricots. You will need both, she says grimly. Over the next few hours, you unroll scrolls so old they wheeze. Letters between traders, copies of declarations, shipment breakdowns, and yes, mention of rugs. Lots of rugs, mostly dull beige, sold in large batches at odd discounts, always marked for ceremonial gifting. You frown. That phrase is code for something. One letter catches your eye, a transaction between a known rug guild and a northern intermediary. The handwriting looks familiar, precise loops, conservative flourishes. You fish out the confiscated scroll from your satchel. Match. Same hand. It is not just smugglers laundering spices. Someone is laundering politics. You thank Parvin and promise to return the apricot bowl, which you absolutely do not intend to do. Out in the street, things are noisier than usual. A festival is being set up, a kind of half-holiday, commemorating the emperor's miraculous ability to ride a horse and dictate edicts at the same time. Musicians are warming up. A juggler drops a torch and pretends it was on purpose. And in the center square, carpets. So many carpets. You squint. There is a new stall, low benches, heavy shades, and rugs folded in peculiar ways, all geometric reds and swirling browns. No signage. The seller wears a headscarf and dark glasses, which is either for sun protection or mystery marketing. You approach. Greetings. You offer. The seller replies. I am with tax, you say, flashing your insignia. That explains the aura. You ignore the jab. These rugs, new designs? They are old, very old, antique patterns from the Zagros valleys. You blink. You mean the tribal knotwork? The seller nods. Mostly extinct now. One family still remembers. The rugs are strange, angular, harsh at first, then oddly hypnotic. You run your fingers along one edge and feel a bump, not a knot, something hard. You flip it over and pry open a seam. Inside, a tiny bronze token with a symbol stamped into it, one you have seen before, on a merchant license tied to banned interregional pacts. You look up. The seller is watching you carefully. That should not be in there, you say. No, they agree. It should not. You pause. How many more like this? Enough to build a fleet. That is troublingly poetic. Historians still debate whether underground merchant leagues operated parallel to the imperial bureaucracy or were part of it all along. Some argue the lines were blurred deliberately to keep plausible deniability intact. You are now leaning toward the second camp. The seller folds the rug back up, calm as a sleeping cat. I could seize the whole stall, you say, though not entirely convincingly. You could, they reply. Or you could take this token to the old dye house near the water channel. Ask for the lavender barrel. Someone will explain. They smile. You hate it when people smile like that. It never means good news. Still, curiosity wins. You head toward the water channel, an ancient aqueduct rerouted to serve half the lower district. The old dye house is still there, mostly abandoned except for a few squatters and one very territorial rooster. Inside, it smells like vinegar and flowers. The lavender barrel is in the back, half covered in dust. You knock. Silence. Then the top creaks open slightly, and a bearded man peers out like a turtle. Password? He croaks. You hold up the token. He blinks. That works too. He leads you down a narrow flight of stairs into a basement that looks like a cross between a war room and a weaver's guild. Maps, carpet samples, dossiers. Apparently, you have stumbled into the regional headquarters of the Persian Rug Export Syndicate. You had not even known such a thing existed, according to the man who calls himself Hamid. No surname, carpet taxes are just the surface of a much deeper network involving border tolls, price fixing, and even diplomatic bribes disguised as artisan gifts. You interrupt. I am just trying to collect taxes on fringe dye usage. He nods. That is how it starts. They show you one ledger, hand-drawn charts comparing border inspections to rainfall patterns. Apparently, smugglers move more rugs during wet months, when inspectors are busy drying out scrolls and avoiding puddles. You stare at the chart. Someone has added tiny camel stickers to it. You lean back. So now you know, carpets are not just a household item or decorative export. They are a coded language, a vehicle for secrets, and apparently the foundation of a low-key espionage ring. You leave the dye house feeling like you just passed through a very soft coup. The street outside seems brighter. A child runs past waving a piece of frayed rug like a flag. Somewhere, a man is loudly selling carpet-infused dates. You will need to report all this, but not yet. First, you are going to need some tea, possibly a lot of it. You settle back into your small, creaky quarters with a pot of strong, bitter tea steaming on a low table. Your camel is sulking outside, possibly plotting revenge for yesterday's tree incident. You sip and think, tracing the threads of this carpet mystery like a half-forgotten dream. The scrolls, the tokens, the dyed rugs with secret compartments. It all feels like a patchwork quilt of half-truths stitched with coincidence and craft. But you are not fooled. Someone is orchestrating a grander scheme, and you are smack in the middle of it. It is time to visit the city's marketplace, a sprawling labyrinth of stalls and haggling voices. The bazaar smells of roasted lamb, crushed spices, and, oddly, fresh pomegranate. It is a place where every transaction carries a story, and every story hides a secret. You weave through the crowd, noting familiar faces, the spice sellers with their piles of turmeric, the potters arranging cracked jars, and the occasional street performer juggling with the ease of a man who knows not to drop anything precious. You find yourself drawn to a quiet corner where carpets are displayed with a casual elegance. There, an elderly woman sits cross-legged, her fingers tracing the patterns of a finely woven rug. Her eyes are sharp, despite the lines that mark decades of sun and wind. You approach. "Good day," you say softly. "May I see your rugs?" She nods without looking up. They are stories, not just carpets. You smile. "I am here to listen." She begins to speak, her voice low and rhythmic like the hum of a distant loom. She tells you of a time when carpets were more than floor coverings. They were maps, histories, and messages woven in wool. According to her, certain tribes used specific knots and colors to signal routes, safe havens, and warnings. A red swirl might mean danger ahead, a blue wave, a water source nearby. These rugs were passports in a world without paper. You remember the token from Hamid's dye house and wonder if it is part of this secret language. Historians still debate how much of this is legend versus documented practice. Some argue that the symbolic meanings of carpet patterns were exaggerated by travelers seeking exotic tales. Others believe these codes were essential to trade and survival across the vast Persian landscapes. The woman chuckles softly, as if reading your thoughts. Legends have their truths. She invites you to examine a rug she claims is centuries old. As your fingers brush the weave, you notice a small tear near the edge. Carefully, you pull it open to reveal a hidden pouch filled with tiny inked scrolls, letters, poems, and what appears to be a rudimentary map. You sit back, amazed. The rug is a literal archive. Your mind spins. Could these rugs be the key to unraveling the smuggling network? Or perhaps a tool to unlock the mysteries of Persia's ancient trade routes? Before you can ask more, the woman hands you a small package wrapped in linen for your journey. You unwrap it to find a set of dyed threads, each color subtly different, for weaving your own stories, she says. You thank her and step back into the marketplace bustle, clutching your new treasure. The sun dips lower, casting long shadows over the city's winding streets. As you head home, you think about the weight of history resting beneath your fingertips, the silent stories woven into every carpet, waiting patiently for someone to listen. You wake the next day feeling the faint aroma of saffron and dried apricots still clinging to your clothes, a gentle reminder of yesterday's encounters. Your camel, now fully forgiven, stands patiently by the door, and you prepare yourself for the journey ahead. The threads gifted by the elderly woman lie neatly coiled in your satchel, a curious promise of hidden meanings yet to be discovered. Your first stop is the city's grand caravanserai, a bustling inn and marketplace where traders from distant lands converge. It is a place alive with the murmur of countless tongues and the clatter of goods being exchanged. Here, Persian carpets are not mere objects. They are symbols of prestige, gifts of diplomacy, and occasionally tools of intrigue. You navigate the courtyard, your eyes drawn to a merchant seated beside an impressive array of textiles. His robes are finely embroidered, and he wears a turban twisted with the flair of a man used to command respect. You introduce yourself as a tax collector, careful to keep your tone casual, but authoritative. He raises an eyebrow. Ah, the carpet inspector. What brings you to my humble stall? You gesture to the pile of rugs. I am following a thread, quite literally. There are whispers of secret messages woven into these fabrics. The merchant laughs softly. Whispers, yes, but truths? That depends on whom you ask. He pulls out a small carpet, its patterns intricate and precise. This is from the Zagros region, much like the one you saw yesterday. Notice the unusual blue border? You lean in. Yes, it is striking. Blue dye was rare and expensive, often reserved for royal commissions. But some traders used it to mark their goods for discreet identification. Who sent them? Where they came from? You nod, recalling the dyed threads in your bag. Do you know of any guilds or groups that still use these markings? He smiles mysteriously. There are always those who prefer to remain unseen. The rug syndicates of old still whisper in the shadows. Historians still argue whether these groups were extensions of the empire or rebellious factions. I suspect a bit of both. You thank him and continue through the caravanserai, your mind swirling with possibilities. Among the crowd, a familiar figure catches your eye, a young apprentice weaving at a small loom. He looks up, startled, and quickly hides a rolled-up carpet under the table. Curiosity piqued, you approach. May I see your work? He hesitates, then nods, revealing a small rug covered in geometric patterns and tiny embroidered symbols. You point to one symbol, a tiny star stitched in gold thread. What does this mean? The boy shrugs. My master says it is a sign of safe passage. You smile. A message then, like a secret map. He nods eagerly, eyes shining. Yes, we learn these codes from the elders. They say the rugs speak for us when words cannot. You realize that this craft is not just tradition, but a living language. one that connects generations through thread and color. As you prepare to leave, the apprentice offers you a small, hand-woven pouch. For your journey, you accept, feeling the soft weight of trust. Walking back through the caravanserai, you wonder how many secrets lie hidden beneath these carpets, waiting for the right eyes to see them. You carry the apprentice's pouch carefully as you leave the caravanserai, the sun climbing higher and warming the dusty streets. The air hums with activity, donkeys bray, vendors shout, and the scent of fresh bread drifts from a nearby bakery. You pause for a moment, letting the noise settle into a gentle background hum, like a soft drumbeat beneath your thoughts. Your next destination is the Imperial Dye Workshop, a cavernous space hidden behind high walls, where colors are brewed from earth, plants, and insects. Here, artisans concocted the pigments that transformed plain wool into radiant tapestries. You have learned that the dyes themselves sometimes held secret significance beyond mere aesthetics. Inside, the workshop smells of vinegar and crushed minerals. Large vats bubble with purple, red, and yellow mixtures, each guarded jealously by a master dyer. One such dyer, a stout man named Reza, watches you with a wary eye as you approach. "I hear you seek knowledge of colors beyond their face," he says gruffly. You nod, carefully unpacking the threads from the apprentice's pouch. Reza examines them thoughtfully. "Unusual shades," he mutters. "Not from this season's harvest." You ask about the political weight colors might carry. Colors speak louder than words in these parts. Reza explains. Blue for loyalty, red for power, green for hope. But there are whispers that some hues mark allegiance to secret factions, a language only a few understand. You listen as he recounts a curious tale, a shipment of supposedly standard red dye that was actually laced with a rare compound causing the fabric to shimmer faintly in moonlight, an effect only visible to insiders during covert meetings. Historians still argue whether this was a practical invention or mere legend spun to impress foreign envoys. Either way, it illustrates the subtlety of Persian textile politics. Reza leans in. If you wish to understand these secrets, you must visit the Silk Road merchants. They carry dyes and patterns that never reach the city. Thanking him, you step back into the sun, threads in hand, mind spinning with the layered meanings of color, trade, and tradition. You consider how these vibrant hues could be woven into the story of your carpet tokens and hidden scrolls. Somewhere out there, beyond the city walls, the next piece of the puzzle waits, and you are determined to find it. The dusty road out of the city stretches before you like a ribbon unraveling into the distance, flanked by golden fields and distant mountains cloaked in morning mist. You mount your camel, the animal swaying gently beneath you, and set off toward the famed Silk Road, that ancient artery pulsing with the footsteps of traders, adventurers, and dreamers. Traveling this route is a lesson in patience and observation. You trudge alongside caravans loaded with spices, silk bolts, and those very carpets whose secrets you seek. The air carries the mingled scents of sandalwood, leather, and the occasional waft of cooking fires. At one resting point, you encounter a small group of merchants from Central Asia, their faces weathered but friendly. They beckon you to share tea and stories, and you settle in beside them. One, an elder named Timur, speaks of patterns woven into carpets that encode not just routes, but entire family histories, a sort of textile genealogy. Timur unfurls a large rug, pointing to symbols that look like vines curling around a tree. "This is our family tree," he explains softly. "It tells of ancestors, battles, and blessings. It is both art and record." You run your fingers lightly over the wool, amazed at the complexity. The idea of a living document woven by hand sparks a strange sense of connection across time. He also shares a curious fact. In some tribes, carpets were exchanged during negotiations not for their material value, but as peace offerings, soft gifts to soothe hard hearts. You can almost picture a heated council room quieting as a vibrant rug is unrolled, tensions softening under the weight of color and craftsmanship. Historians still argue whether these symbolic uses of carpets were widespread or isolated customs of particular groups. Yet the presence of such stories hints at a deeper, almost spiritual relationship between people and their woven goods. As night falls, you camp beneath a sky filled with stars, the hum of the caravan around you blending with the gentle rustle of woven fabrics flapping in the breeze. You tuck the dyed threads safely away and think of the many hands that have shaped these textiles, each not a whisper from the past. Your journey along the Silk Road is far from over, but you feel a growing sense of purpose. These carpets are more than tax items or luxury goods. They are vessels of memory, coded messages in wool and dye. And you, the collector, are becoming their reluctant guardian. Dawn breaks with a soft golden glow that filters through your tent flap, gently nudging you awake. The camp is stirring, the murmur of voices, the clink of cooking pots, and the low call of camels preparing for the day's journey. You stretch, muscles stiff from yesterday's long ride, but eager to press onward. Your next stop is a small mountain village renowned for its distinctive carpet weaving tradition. Here, you hear, patterns are inspired not by abstract designs, but by local legends and the natural world, a patchwork of myths embroidered with wildflowers and mountain creatures. As you approach, children dart between narrow stone alleys, their laughter echoing like music, while elders sit outside sunlit doorways, weaving at their looms with hands as steady as the mountains themselves. You are welcomed warmly by a weaver named Layla, whose fingers move gracefully as she works on a rug depicting a swirling river guarded by mythical creatures. She explains that these designs are stories passed down orally, transformed into visual tapestries. You ask about the dyes used. Layla smiles, dipping a finger into a bowl of deep green pigment. From nettles and pomegranate skins, she says, colors that tell of the earth's gifts. You notice subtle differences in the knots and textures compared to the city rugs. Layla explains that each village has its own weaving fingerprint, techniques, and patterns that mark their identity, a woven signature. A particularly curious tradition catches your ear. Villagers believe that if a carpet is woven with a deliberate flaw, a knot out of place, or an unexpected color, It wards off evil spirits. You imagine the painstaking care needed to insert such imperfections without ruining the entire piece. Historians still debate whether this intentional flaw is a superstitious myth or a deliberate artistic choice symbolizing humility and imperfection in craftsmanship. As afternoon wanes, Layla offers you a small, imperfectly woven square of fabric. For luck on your travels, she says. You accept it with gratitude, marveling at how each region's carpets tell a different story, threads binding not just wool, but people, beliefs, and histories. You prepare to leave, the weight of these new insights settling warmly in your mind. With each step, you feel closer to the hidden heart of this carpet mystery. One knot, one color, one story at a time. The road winds down from the mountains into a lush valley where fruit orchards and vineyards stretch as far as the eye can see. The air is heavy with the scent of ripe figs and crushed herbs. Here, in the fertile lands of southern Persia, carpets take on a different role, often used as picnic cloths, prayer mats, or even blankets for nomadic tents. Yet even in these humble uses, their designs hold meaning. You find yourself in a bustling village market where women sit weaving carpets in the shade of fig trees. Their hands move rhythmically, chatting softly in a language tinged with laughter and song. You settle beside them, curious about their craft. One woman, Zara, offers to show you a carpet depicting the legendary simorgh, a mythical bird said to possess healing powers. She explains that such symbols bring protection and blessings, especially during long journeys. You ask about how carpets are passed down. Zara smiles wistfully. My mother gave me this pattern. It is our family's blessing and burden. She gestures to a faded section where the wool has worn thin, like a memory fading, but never forgotten. A younger woman nearby adds that some patterns are linked to weddings and childbirth, woven into carpets that mark life's milestones. You marvel at how these textiles function as both art and diary, recording joys and sorrows alike. You recall the dyed threads, the secret knots, and the hidden scrolls, realizing that these carpets are much more than tax commodities. They are living stories of a people's soul. Historians still debate how much influence these rural traditions had on courtly designs. Some argue that the opulent carpets of royal palaces borrowed heavily from village motifs. Others suggest they evolved independently. As the sun sinks low, you buy a small, soft carpet depicting intertwined vines, a reminder that even the simplest designs can carry deep roots. You roll it carefully and continue toward your final destination, your thoughts as tangled and colorful as the threads themselves. The evening settles in with a calm hush, and you find yourself approaching the grand city where the emperor's court resides, a place where carpets are not just objects, but symbols of imperial power. The palace is an architectural marvel, its walls lined with ornate tilework, and vast halls filled with tapestries telling stories of conquest and glory. You enter the imperial workshops, where master weavers toil beneath crystal chandeliers, creating carpets destined for throne rooms and diplomatic gifts. The air is thick with the scent of wool and dye, punctuated by the soft clack of wooden looms. Here you meet Farid, a weaver entrusted with producing a carpet featuring the emperor's seal woven into its center, a subtle yet unmistakable mark of authority. Farid explains that every knot is counted, every color carefully chosen to convey messages of loyalty and prestige. You watch as he demonstrates the technique used to embed small metallic threads, which shimmer faintly in candlelight, a detail that, you learn, was intended to impress visiting dignitaries and convey wealth without words. Yet, Farid confides, some carpets carry secret markings too subtle for outsiders to detect, signs of political alliances, trade agreements, or even warnings. It seems that the empire's sprawling bureaucracy extended to the very threads of its carpets. Historians still argue how widespread these secret codes truly were, whether they were the clever invention of a few or a common practice across the empire's vast territory. Before you leave, Farid presents you with a small piece of fabric embroidered with a seemingly random pattern. Keep this, he says, for it holds the key to the final puzzle. You tuck it carefully into your satchel, the weight of countless stories now almost overwhelming. The threads have led you here, through villages and markets, workshops and mountains. As you prepare for the journey home, you reflect on the intricate dance between art, commerce, and power woven into every carpet story. The misadventures of a simple carpet tax collector have turned into a tapestry far richer than you ever imagined. You travel back through familiar landscapes, the sun casting long shadows over the roads you now know like the backs of your hands. The carpets you have collected, examined, and admired feel heavier with meaning in your pack. Each thread seems to whisper secrets of distant weavers, ancient symbols, and hidden messages that defy time. Your thoughts drift back to the earliest days of your journey, the dusty city streets, the dye vats, the mountain village, the stories woven into every pattern. You recall the apprentice's pouch, the secret scrolls, and the shimmering threads, and you understand that this journey was never just about taxes or trade. It was about connection, about how these humble carpets carry the weight of culture, memory, and identity, woven by countless hands, each not a testament to human creativity and resilience. As you approach your final destination, the familiar sight of your own home fills you with quiet relief. You unroll your collected carpets gently, running your fingers over their surfaces as if greeting old friends. The tales they tell do not fade with distance. Instead, they deepen, intertwining your story with theirs. Historians still debate many details of carpet trade and symbolism, what was fact, what was legend. But one thing is clear, these woven works of art have touched lives in ways far beyond their appearance. Now you settle in for a final evening of reflection, the soft rustle of carpets around you like a comforting lullaby. Your misadventures as a Persian carpet tax collector have come full circle, leaving you richer in stories and quieter in spirit. You close your eyes, imagining the gentle hum of looms, the scent of dye, and the soft whisper of wool, each a thread in the fabric of history. The day fades slowly, the colors softening like a watercolor dream. You sink deeper into your chair, the gentle weight of the carpets comforting beneath your fingertips. Outside, the evening breeze carries the faintest scent of earth and wildflowers, wrapping you in a calm embrace. You breathe slowly, letting the images of weaving villages, bustling markets, and imperial halls settle like dust on old wood. Each story, each thread, a quiet reminder of how people long ago shaped their world through patience, skill, and a touch of whimsy. There is no need to hurry now. The world can wait, and so can your thoughts. Let them drift gently, like a thread unspooling through your fingers, soft and slow. Rest is near. The hum of distant looms, the warmth of dyed wool, and the soft murmur of ancient stories cradle you. Feel the calm seep in, easing every muscle, every thought, until sleep carries you away on a tapestry woven by time itself. Sweet dreams.